Hola, buenas tardes a todos y todas. Me llamo Marcelina Haftka. Hablo español un poquito. So I will switch into English. As English, well, it's an important but less important language in terms of the number of English of native speakers. Apparently we have some technical issues. But this is the language we work and communicate on our on our daily basis. Okay, I will make some stuff. So anyway, actually I should get off the stage because I was not intelligent enough to take my computer. Oh, thank you. And most of the speakers have already told everything I wanted to say today. But well, they told me to stand here and entertain you for 20 minutes, so I will try. Let's see. Well, usually, and a good presentation should start with some boring definition or some theory. So let me start with it. You would expect that some serious, I don't know, international organization would invent something clever about translation, or maybe some translation agency, but actually quite a nice thing I found, or managed to find, is written by a weather service of Canada. When you think about Canada, it's a huge translation project in itself, as they have both English and French as official languages. Practically anything in Canada is translated, or from English into French, or from Français en Anglais. So let me, yeah, it's work. 2 bits. You can read it by yourself. Why I put collaboration at the top? Because I think you cannot, or I cannot, communicate my translation clearly, completely, accurately, and appropriately without collaborating with you. I think the communication between various agents on the way, from the content authors through project owners, PMs and so on, secretaries, translation agencies, language service providers, smaller translation agencies to translators, the communication is most important, and without the communication we won't do anything good. You can have a genius translator without the information from you. Well, this is my boss. Actually, I'm not my own boss. And she tells you, think. Before you start designing your product, your service, your content, think, are you dreaming of going global? Because maybe not. Or maybe you would have, I don't know, 5 or 10 users somewhere inside your company who would need a different version, but well, they can go to your colleague or to you yourself and say, hey, can you tell me just in a few words in German or in Spanish, what is it? What's your content about? If so, if you're really dreaming of going global and you think you would need some translation or localization, prepare. As the manager said yesterday, anticipate, prepare, internationalize your content or software before. Think about target locales. Maybe you would need to change something in your design first. Maybe you would need to prepare it to be translatable, to be manageable for translations. Maybe you would need some screenshots. So when in Arabic countries, I would need a screenshot in my own language, not, I don't know, a screenshot in Russian. The same goes for metadata, for keywords. Those are things that usually get lost somewhere in the workflow, and you have to prepare. You have to think about them before you start working. And then the second thing is plan. Include the translation in your budget, but also in your workflow. Last year, Erin had this presentation on Show Me Your Money. Well, I know it's very expensive to translate things going global. Sometimes you have 5 languages. My biggest project, well, the biggest project I participated in, I believe it was about 60 languages. So when you multiply your content by 60 languages, then you can count the zeros. So if you prepare and plan well, you can actually decrease the price of localization by about 10–15%. So, well, you say, well, 10% is not a lot. But, well, I'm telling you, when you have thousands and thousands of pounds, dollars, euro, whatever, well, 10%, it makes sense to think about it. Now then, your workflow. Usually what happens, from my point of view, I don't know, a huge messenger that needs to be launched in a week everywhere in the world. Well, how long does it take to design a messenger to write all the content? Do you really write 5,000 or 10,000 words per day of quality, good quality text per day, ready to use? I don't think so. And sometimes you expect a translator to produce your text in his or her language in such a quite short time. So please include us, include the translators, localizers, include some graphic designers in your workflow, although sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes you won't need so much time because you've got a huge content, but actually you have some bits that won't be translated at all. For instance, I don't know, you've got a project to go and export something to Japan, but you have no Japanese-speaking customer center. So, well, if you translate all the products into Japanese, they still won't be able to order those products in Japanese because your customer service is only, I don't know, English, German, and French speaking. So maybe you don't need the entire documentation translated. The same goes for marketing texts. Sometimes I believe, okay, sorry, translators don't watch it, I believe it's not worth translating a text. It's better to use your marketing department and let them do it from scratch. Because I am a freelancer. I don't work in your company. I know nothing about your style, about your no-no words, or yes, please do words, what we will see in a moment. Now, as for preparing, some maybe basic or maybe trivial, but still important things. When you're preparing, this is from, I don't know what it is. It's from the side. It's Dropbox design for internationalization, a difficult word it is. And they prepared some screenshots. And usually what happens, all the software, at least from my experience, is very Anglo-centric. So you think English is important. And, well, other languages will have to deal with it. What they did, they wrote an app, folds up, in Elvish. Elvish, this is the thing you see over there. So as you can see, it happens quite often. English is a very short language. Elvish is even shorter. So when translated into English, actually there was no more place for the text. So think about various lengths of words and phrases in different languages. Provide some extra space for visuals, because if your text gets longer, then suddenly your visual, well, it will get stuck somewhere in the corner. Think about space limitation. If you have by now in English, and you tell your translator, maximum number limit 8 characters. Sorry, acheter maintenant in French, by now, is 18 characters. Now 8 and not 7 like in English. Think about text accessibility. Try to separate the text, make the text accessible, because if not, you will still have this Elvish on your graphic, on your visual, and well, it will be hard to be translated. And then think that the easier you make your product, your service, your content, your text translatable, the best it is for you, because time is money, and money is savings. So it's better for you and your budget and your manager, if you prepare well, then the translation costs will be lower. Think about ability to handle foreign character sets. We are from 19, I believe, countries in here, so I do not have to explain you how important it is. Think about the thing that some languages use the left to right direction and the others right to left. Think about italics or not. This might seem bizarre, but once in Asia, when you look at all those Asian letters and signs, well, they actually do not use italics, at least in some of them. Because when you put italics in such characters, well, it becomes blurry, it's not readable. So it's not always possible to use italics or bold. And then the thing about images and colors. Well, some colors in some countries, as the guys this morning said, in some countries, well, sorry, the penis will be good enough. In some countries, not. In some countries, the white color will be, I don't know, as in Poland, the white color is for brides. In some colors, in some countries, black or red or something, they have good connotations or bad. So think about it first. Now, format, sorry. Oh, by the way, thank you, Mox, for letting me use this picture of yours. I do not have imagined the situation. I had it even this morning when listening to one of the first talks. When you send an Excel file of terms or strings divided into 2 or 3 because you have some variables in the middle, so it's easier for you to throw all the variables away, cut your string into 2 or 3 parts, and leave it, put it into your Excel, and then you sort it in alphabetical order. And then I get it, and okay. Those of you who were at the workshop by Marta Bartnicka could see how nasty can Excel be. Now, these are only some formats. You can send me your content in. Really, do you really need to use your doc or Excel export? Really? Do you think so? Look at this beauty. I know. We've updated our app. It's urgent. It's only 3 words. Please send your translation by replying to this email. After. Context is king. If I know nothing, and if you send something like this, how do I ever know? At least cancel anytime. And if I know it's a messenger or something, I can figure it out, more or less, but I'm still not sure. If you ordered your translation by some outsourcing service, by a large agency, smaller agency, who ordered it from me, well, usually I will not even have a chance to ask you a question if you send only something like this. And sometimes I try to ask the question, what is the context? And quite often, well, there are 2 kinds of clients. One kind of client, use your own best judgment. Okay. But there are other clients. Ta-da! So actually, you can do it. You can either write currency price / cycle after, cancel anytime, or even provide the entire context, and now then the translator is happy because he or she knows what to do with it. Look at this beauty. It's a part, thank you, Tomasz. It's a part of React INTL. There's a second thing I found a couple of days ago, Lingui.js for JavaScript internationalization. I always have the problem with this word. Look at this beauty. ID, default message, and description. Although in here, this is really basic, but in some cases, it really saves lives, translators' life, and poor kitten's life. It's not enough to simply say, okay, we'll copy and paste everything. If your translator doesn't know whether you're going for the entire range of systems or whether you're going just for Windows or just for iOS or something, he or she won't be able to translate it well. or he will or she will simply translate, I don't know. I use Android, so I will translate everything like I've got in my smartphone. As simple as that. And then your user is an Apple user, and will say, hey, okay, more or less I understand everything, but there's something wrong. He or she will see that you didn't think about him or her, that you didn't really think about all those users of iOS because you put your Android translations into that. Oh, sorry. Now, trivial? Maybe. Strings, number, blah, blah, blah. Once again, it was an Excel file as usual. Thank you very much. Should be translated in the plural form and some others into singular. Or the translation should be done for both singular and plural forms because the system groups such notifications automatically. Okay, thank you very much. Even your own Wikipedia will tell you that the world of languages have plenty of numbers. And even in Polish, the basic rule. In English, you have one dog and two dogs. In Polish, you have one pies, two psy, it's difficult to mix languages, two psy, three psy, four psy, but 5 psów, 6 psów, etc. But you have to prepare before, you have to plan before to include this in your code, that sometimes 0 might have a different form, sometimes 1 or 2 or 3, for instance, for Polka, this is a funny word, Polka, these are languages who have a separate word for more than 2 and less than 10. So you have to imagine this, and you have to prepare your software, your content, your code, whatever. If not, you won't get all the translations, or the user will get some strange forms. And I'm only speaking about the nominative case. There are some languages, for instance, Polish, which have declensions. And you have plenty of various cases of the exact very same noun. So please think about it. It's simple enough. You simply Google or type into Wikipedia some sort of, I don't know, French plural. And you will get some basic information. You don't need a huge number of grammar at the beginning, just to get this idea, to be prepared, that later on, your translator will either ask you questions, or will translate as it is, and then you will have a problem afterwards with your users. So, the order doesn't matter, I just wanted to have a triangle over there. So, many of you, like Natalia and Pavel last year, and this year, plenty of you, I'm sorry guys, I can't remember all of your names, mentioned plain language, controlled authoring, or structured authoring, simplified technical English. This is what saves us translators as well. And what I was going to tell at the beginning, and I've completely forgotten. I am Polish native. I'm from this last generation of Polish kids that had to learn Russian. So in theory, Russian is my second language. Then I fall in love with French. So Français is my third and hard, let's say, language. And then I started learning English, so I would say it's my 3.5 language. And many of you are not natives, and many of your translators are not natives. So try to pass your message, try to convey your text, your content, as simple as possible. It doesn't mean it's childish. It doesn't mean that you underestimate your product, your content. But it can assure that your message will be conveyed in the right way. It may be more possible for the translator to understand your text, even if he or she is far away from your company. Because, translators are strange animals, and sometimes they work in their pajamas in the middle of the night or in the morning. So sometimes things are not obvious at 3 a.m., if you know what I mean. So the more rules you follow, as Anton said, content as a code, code as a set of rules and principles, the more rules you use, the more clear it is what you're trying to say to your user and to your translator, the better your translation will be. Now, I got one, I don't know whether she's here or not, Teresa Barańska. Are you here? Oh, she's run away. Yeah? Oh. So, Teresa, anyway, sorry, I wanted to show you my translation before, but I didn't do it. Sorry. A couple of weeks ago, I was scrolling my Facebook, and I saw great text, and I couldn't find it afterwards. And yesterday, I met this girl, and I asked her, was it you? And she said yes. And she let me to read you something, although it was in Polish. Sorry if my English does not meet your expectations. Let's talk about complaints later on. No punctuation, poor formatting, version control problems. You don't do it to your code, do you? So why do you do it to your documentation? Docs-like code means to me as much as applying developers' good practices to work on documents, like, let's take GitHub, for example. It's not enough to be just a master of clean code. Be a master of clean text. Teresa Barańska, thank you. And I think what Teresa said is exactly this. If you've got a clean, clear language, you will still convey the message better, and you will make it more translatable. So, just some hints. Use simple and straightforward language, please. Create standardized text whenever possible. I know sometimes it's not, and sometimes you have to do something more, something less, but it helps. If you have some style guides, if you have some glossaries, please do send them along with your translation. Please make them obligatory. Then all those participants in the chain of your workflow, of your translation or localization workflow, will have to follow them. And it will be a great help for us. Use correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation. As Teresa said, you don't forget, I don't know, commas or semicolons in your code. Don't do it to your content, to your textual content. Keep a strict word order. It's very important. The Polish language tends to be anything it likes to be. But when writing in English, keep in mind, quite often your readers are not native, your translators are not native. They might understand something in another way, so especially when you've got plenty of adjectives, when you've got some words that can be both nouns and verbs, sometimes it's not easy. So please try to keep a strict word order. Write your message as a single unit. If you've got a string, do not cut it. Those of you who were at Marta's workshop saw how difficult it is once you've got a message cut into several pieces, and to figure out which goes where and in which sentence, it's really hard. Choose one term to name one concept. Please do it. Don't name your product, your service in various ways, because it is obvious for you. But when I'm a translator, and if you name something in various ways, I might not know that you're speaking or writing about the very same product or service or place or whatever. Avoid ambiguity and jargon. I listened to the presentation this morning. Well, yes, it would be great, but translators are boring and hate humor, ambiguity, metaphors. We hate it. At least, I'm not talking about literature. I'm talking about technical documentation. I'm talking about software. The less metaphors and ambiguity there is, the better we can understand and convey your message once again. Use text styles. Docs is better than doc. All the styles in your format, as you could see, there are plenty of them. I can simply handle in my CAT tool, which means CAT-assisted or CAT-aided translation. They use styles. They have styles. The styles are much better because you avoid bizarre formatting. You avoid some things that are not obvious for translators. When you use styles, I know where your topic is, where your header is, what you're writing about, what is where. keep in mind locales. Keep in mind that your date might have a different format, that your measures might have measure units might have a different format. Think to leave some space. Think to leave this possibility of changing the order of words, of, I don't know, currencies, for instance, and revise your content. You would be surprised how many there are texts which were not revised. And if your product is complex enough, sometimes, as Alison said today, when it is complicated, I don't know whether it's a new term, because, you know, nowadays science is, or whether it's a typo or something, please try to revise your content. Then you will make it a better place, as a couple of people said. Now, you've got some links, but anyway, when you writing for translation or writing for localization or designing for internationalization, you will find a lot of them in Google. So just Dropbox, MailChimp are some of them. Unicode will present you some plural fun facts about various language. And Mr. Postawczyński, I don't know him, so he didn't let me use this link, but he publishes it everywhere, so I hope he's not against it. Why your variable will not work in English. Quite a good presentation, very short one, for those who do not speak and understand Polish at all, why sometimes it is better not to use a variable. I know it's not possible all the time, but still. And thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Marcelina. Guys, questions about translation, content localization? I'll try it. Internationalization? That's a difficult one. Like,
it is. I always have problems with this one.
Yeah.
No questions.
Can't see any hands. 3, 2.
Rafał, Marcin, you were supposed to ask a question.
Anton, I'm sorry. And one more here. Yep.
Hi, Anton. Antoś.
Yeah, hi again. I've got a question about automated translation. What would you recommend for us to use as a tool or approach? Because we have plenty of documentation, but there's nobody to translate them, literally, because localization team is busy with gaming projects, and we're planning to do the translations ourselves. We got a small team. What would be your suggestions as to how to approach this issue?
Well, actually, I would love to talk about this during the break, because it's a huge subject. Actually, it depends. There are plenty of CAT tools. There are plenty of QA tools on the market. And although they are all usable, they are not the same. And much of your choice decision depends on the format you use, on the legacy content you already have and could use or reuse, on the consistency of your content that you have created so far. So there are plenty of factors that are included. So if you wish, we can talk during the break. And yeah, but anyway, my general advice would be try to consult someone, either a big language providers who knows each and every tool and could recommend something, or talk to a translator of your choice, and maybe he or she will present you some solutions, some tools, and then you could discuss more about it. Because without seeing your formats, without seeing your files, your expectations, and especially technical requirements, I'm not able to give you a straight answer, just use this.
There was one more question.
Yay, Rafał.
And
he promised me he would ask a question. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you, do you have any favorite cut tools, or what do you use at the moment?
It's always difficult, you know, because I'm not sponsored by anyone. So
so you can name more than one? So
yeah, I will.
Commercial?
A long time ago, I used to work with Trados when it was not SDL Trados, but simply Trados Workbench. Then I moved to a French tool called WordFast, and it was great 15 years ago. Then some things changed on the market. Sorry, WordFast, I still love you. And I started to use various tools. At one moment, I was working with about 15 tools at the same time. Nowadays, most of my projects are online projects, so I'm working on my client's servers. So I use MemoQ. Sometimes I use Xlib editors of various names. I use Passolo, but it's really translators unfriendly. And I use WordFast just because I like to change and go back to this old-fashioned tool, although they have some new versions, but I believe that MemoQ for the moment is the best for my needs and for my project. And by the way, those formats were just chosen formats that it supports, so MemoQ supports. But I'm not sponsored, so as I told before, you have to make your own choice. You have to discuss with someone who knows your technical requirements, your content requirements, and sometimes MemoQ could be a good choice, and sometimes maybe it could be a bad choice because your company requires something completely different.
Okay. One question here, one question here, one question there, one question there, one question. Oh, too many.
And I was so stressed. I thought no one would ask a question, so I asked those two guys, please ask me a question. Okay.
Okay.
Rafael,
how many questions? One last question now?
No, Rafael is the last one, but the others, let others speak. Who wants to?
Okay, hands up again. I know that there was one question, yeah, right there, and it was one of the first hands up. Yep.
Hi. Okay, I hear myself.
Oh.
So I'm a technical writer. Yeah, hi. And this year, guys from QA, they wanted to translate a UI for one of my products that I'm working on. And first they asked a localization team, because we do have this, but they didn't like the result. And they were like, why won't we ask a technical writer to translate that? Because she knows the product. And I've spent a week translated 300 strings, and they went like, why so long? And I tried to explain them that I had to find all the context, that I had to open the UI to find everything, to consult with guys from QA and from developers. And what do you think? Could technical writers really do your job as a translator?
Well, if they wish to.
No,
well,
but
please, translators do not listen.
No, that really takes a lot of time. So I want to convince them that there are special people that do this.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, both technical writers and translators, they have the same goal: to satisfy the end customer, the end user needs, although internally or externally speaking. The thing is, in theory, once you write your content, you're the one who knows it best. But on the other hand, there are people who know, you know, some tricks and stuff who can make this process better and quicker and faster, provided you provide them some tools, which means style guides, glossaries, some goods and bad practices. So I think there is no good answer in here. You know, in some companies, what they do, they translate by their own, and they simply send their text for review or for editing or for QA checks somewhere externally. So they put, as we call it, the meat inside, because they know the best. They know the terminology, they know the product the best, and then they simply just polish in other languages to make it lovelier. But if you believe you have enough time and you know it best, I think you could do it, as the guys today, they showed us they both write and translate their own text, because they know the company, they know their countries. So I can't tell, well, I'm in front of the camera, so you know now all the translators hate me because I'm taking their jobs away. But it depends. It depends on your needs, on your time schedule, on your timesheets, and on your willingness.
No, that's the problem. I do have job to do, and they want me to do
So you
translators' job.
simply go, first of all, go and watch Erin's talk from last year. Go to see your manager or director or whatsoever. Tell him or her, show me your money. I write the content for you, so this and this expensive, so maybe it will be cheaper to outsource the translation. Maybe it will be faster because you know the translators, they have the bizarre tools and they really fast, they type, you know, in some sound speed, so maybe it will be cheaper. And we focus on our core activity. This might work, depending on your manager.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we get, like, it's late, the coffee break has already started, so one last question, and you get to choose who's asking.
So, Rafał, you will be during the break, Annika.
Thanks. I'm Aniko from One Identity, previously Balabit. And we have very complex products and very large documents. And we officially write them in English only. But we also have partners in several countries. And they started actually translating our documents on their own into like Turkish and Japanese and whatever. And they are not really translators, they are not really writers, so we have these sort of unofficial versions of our documents circulating around. And I wonder how to, so do you have any advice on how to convince them to turn to someone who actually knows what they are doing?
Well, convincing is difficult, especially because you're talking about such different cultures. So I don't know, personally and culturally speaking, how you negotiate with them, how you communicate with them, because I don't know those parts of the world. But in general, what you can do first, if you have someone you trust, I would go for looking at your legacy content and comparing at least some bits of your legacy content in English and let's say in Turkish, and see whether it can be validated or not, because it might be good. So it might be a basis for the future for other translators to work on this stuff. And you know, with our tools, we have this possibility to reuse your content if it was translated before. We have this versioning possibilities. So once you accept something, once you validate something, the entire process would not be so long and would not be so expensive afterwards, provided you check and validate what you've already got before. But as for the negotiations with other cultures, I'm sorry, I don't know. I already struggle with my clients, so it's difficult. I know it can be difficult.
Okay. Thank you, Marcelina. That's been wonderful.